So how many people are sleeping today in class? No one sleeping yet? No one's bored? Okay, that's good. I'm teaching 3 classes right now. Each class has 70 students, so I have 185, 190 students right now. For masters or MBA. So today I'll try to share with you some thoughts about what a fraud investigation is. We'll talk more about the execution of an investigation. I'll start you with the definitions of what is fraud, what is an investigation, why people do these things, and then watch some videos, talk a little bit about careers in forensic accounting. If you like, if you're interested in that, if you don't, we'll skip that, and then we'll do some Q&A. Try to do it in 2 hours. So we'll watch a quick video, and I'll show you how we do interviews at Siemens. So when we investigate people for employee misconduct, we're sent out to investigative sites to interview employees.
Tape is rolling. Interview begins 14:20. Right, Mr. Murphy. Perhaps you could start by telling us about your connection to Reflections nightclub.
I didn't have any connection to it.
Funny. Because according to this form, you're one of the directors. For the benefit of the tape, I am now showing the suspect Exhibit A19, an application for a mortgage on the aforementioned property.
I've never seen that before in my life.
Really? Oh, maybe I made a mistake. Perhaps instead you can tell me about the receipts that were found in your jacket pocket earlier today. For the benefit of the tape, I am now showing the suspect Exhibits A20 through 27, receipts for expenses totalling £2,496. Well?
What? That's a plant.
Mr. Murphy, you imagine these receipts were planted in your jacket pocket on this occasion? Right, let's move on. Tell me, do you recognise this man?
Yeah.
For the benefit of the tape, the suspect has identified Martin Wright of 44 West Road, currently in custody. Oh, I'm telling me you don't know this man now?
I know of him, I've seen him, but that's not...
Perfectly, Mr. Murphy, let's move on. Right, so when you met Martin Wright, what did you two talk about?
Look, I've never met Martin Wright. I've never heard of anyone called... Did you just pause that?
Are you refusing to answer, Mr. Murphy?
That's it, witnesses. Oh, what's that night?
Suspect refuses to answer. Oh dear, oh dear. Not going very well, is it? Mr. Murphy, sit down. Now, I can tell you're a very busy man. I'll cut straight to the chase, yeah? Now, I've got one very, very simple question for you, Mr. Murphy. Did you burn down the nightclub? Yes. Mr. Murphy, that's all you do. 2 rents, 1426.
This is a setup!
Interviews over. So, Mr. Murphy, back to his cell. Would you come, sir?
Go. There's no tape in here.
Right.
No, look, sorry, I've had enough.
Mr. Murphy, calm down.
No, I'm not gonna calm down.
Give us the gun back, Murphy. Suspect is armed and becoming desperate. Give me my gun back!
No, look, what?
Mr. Murphy, don't do it. You've got your whole life ahead of you. What a waste.
All right. Excellent video to watch first thing. So that shows you how we really do not do investigations. That's obviously a joke. But it brings a point, which is that investigations is a very serious topic. Why? Something bad will happen in every investigation that you do. Whatever the investigation is canceled, continue, the person is found to be innocent, guilty, the allegation substantiated or not, every investigation will have something bad happen. Someone's going to get fired, someone's going to get sued, the investigations team can be apprehended for executing the wrong investigation procedures in that country, the investigation team can get sued, the employee can be sued. So it's a very serious topic. The other one is that not being lawyers and not being police officers, you have to have a full understanding of the law. You have to have a full understanding of the law in which you execute your investigations in. So if I'm going to Argentina tomorrow to do, good morning, welcome. If I'm going to Argentina tomorrow to do a Siemens fraud investigation, I have to have a full understanding of the law that involves doing investigations in that country. Otherwise, I'll get in trouble. Okay? Can I look in the drawer? Can I look in your office? Can I copy your hard drive? Can I look in your email? Can I look in your wallet? You left your wallet in the office. Can I look in your iPad? All those things are important, and the answer to those questions are, it depends. It depends on the situation in which you're investigating and who you are investigating. We'll cover some of that. I wanted to start with an interesting video to set the stage. And what it says is that anyone can commit a fraud. Any one of us, your wife, your husband, your boyfriend, girlfriend, your grandma, your kids, any one of them, including all of us and me, can commit a fraud. Because fraud is a situation in which a person that is not a psychopath, a person that is not a sociopath, which most of us are not. So if you are a normal human being that has the ability to rationalize and have a conscience, you are not a sociopath, you're not a psychopath, and therefore there's got to be a situation that drives you over the edge. It drives you, and we'll go over that later in the presentation, but it drives you and puts you in a situation where you will want to commit a fraud. And that's known as the fraud triangle. And according to what Rod's telling me, that's going to be on the test. So this is good for your test. The fraud triangle. And there's three parts to the fraud triangle. First, you have to have the opportunity or the motivation to commit a fraud. There has to be a reason why, if you are a normal human being and you're not a criminal and you're not a sociopath or a psychopath, there has to be a situation that puts you in a position where you will want to commit a fraud. That could be your children are sick, you need money to pay for their medical expenses, and your decision is, do I steal to pay for their health care, or do I not do it and then they die? And these are all from true cases that I have worked. Okay, because at the end of every investigation, we ask the people, why did you commit the fraud? And these are some of the answers that are given. It could be that you have a wife, you're married, you have a wife, and you have a mistress. You have to support your mistress, it's very expensive. So you decide that in order to continue your fraud, you steal from your employer. You have a coke problem, you have a heroin problem, you have a vice problem, you like to gamble, you gamble against the wrong people. Whatever it is, the situation that's going to put you in the state of mind that's going to say, holy crap, I got to do something to come up with this cash. The second situation is that you have to have the opportunity. If you have a reason to steal, but your company is tied down in controls, and you are unable to have the opportunity to have access to the assets, to the cash, of whatever you're going to steal, you don't have the opportunity to do so, right? You may have the motivation and the pressure, but if your company is tied in controls, you have a good internal control department, then that reduces the opportunity. And the last one is what? The last one is that you're not a psychopath, you're not a sociopath, and in your brain you have to have the ability to rationalize, as we will watch in the video that's coming up. You're a normal human being, you have pressure, you need money, your girlfriend needs stuff, your wife needs stuff, your second wife needs stuff. You need to come up with the money to pay for it. Your company controls are loose, it gives you the opportunity and the access in order for you to be able to do that. And then in your brain, you decide that that's okay to do, it's a one-time deal, you won't do it again. The word con comes from what? Who can tell me what the word cons come from?
The word
Confidence, exactly. It works from the word confidence. The minute that you have charisma, the minute that you have money, the minute that you have the ability to talk people into certain situations, as most fraudsters do, then you have earned confidence and therefore you have a better chance to commit a fraud. We're going to watch a video of a guy called Walter. This is a real person, this is not an artist, an actor. He's a CPA, he's an MBA, I believe he went to Harvard, and he used to work for WorldCom. Now, this is not about the WorldCom fraud in itself, that's an old fraud, that's a stupid fraud actually, everybody knows about it, it's a long time since it happened. This video is about someone that worked for WorldCom, and when he realized that there was no tone at the top in his organization, he had to make a decision. He said, well, I'm a CPA, I'm an MBA, I've been to ethics training, and I have to make two decisions. The first one is, do I participate on the fraud, right? Do I participate on the fraud, or do I push back to my organization and say the things that we're doing are not correct? And he said what? Who can tell me what he said? When he was faced with the situation of, I need to make a decision about participating in my company's fraud, What did he say? Anyone? Anyone awake? Anyone interested? Anybody cares? No one. Okay. He said, I'll tell you what he said. He said, I'll do it. I'll do it. It's a one-time deal. I'm a company employer. I'm a soldier. I'll do it. That's the first thing. The second thing that he said is what? The time went by. It was no longer a little white lie. And he realized that he's in for the long haul. But he still has the ability to back out. And instead of backing out, what did he say? Anyone can tell me?
Still got through with it.
What that?
He still went through with it.
Still went through it, but worse than that, he said?
He's like, I'm in the long haul.
Yeah, well, worse than that. Thank you. What's your name?
Kyle?
Kyle and?
Oh,
Matt.
Yeah, put your name tags up.
Kyle and Matt. So, what he said is, I want in. Right? He said, I want in. Instead of saying, I'm going to fight this guy, he said, if they're making money and they're doing all these things, I want to be part of the fraud. So we'll watch, this video is actually 6 hours originally. It's condensed to 15 minutes. We'll play about the next 6 minutes or so. You can stop me at any time. I have questions. I'll be stopping the video and making the points as we go across.
Former WorldCom CEO Bernie Evers today was sentenced to 25 years in prison. The 63-year-old entrepreneur wept as the judge handed down the toughest
You hear the Bible game?
in the string of recent corporate scandals in this country.
My name is Walt Pavlo, and in January 2001, I received a 41-month sentence to federal prison for money laundering, wire fraud, and obstruction of justice.
Can you hear in the back there?
Yes. That took place while working at NCI and WorldCom.
I'm Barry Longstone, President of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants.
And I'm Joseph Wells, founder and chairman of the Association of Certified Fraud Executives.
The purpose of this training program is to examine the important connection between fraud and the tone at the top of an organization. Walt Pavlo was caught up in one of the largest accounting frauds in American history, MCI WorldCom.
My responsibilities as a senior manager in billing collections were one, bill the customer for the correct amount reflecting their services. So the other thing was to collect the money that would come in as a result of those invoices that were sent out. So I was responsible for posting payments, credits, and reconciliation of accounts. The pressure was to consistently grow at NCI. And by growth, I mean revenue and in collections of that revenue. Any good business wants to be able to not only grow, but to be able to be paid for the services they provide. NCI in that way is no different.
But what was different was the tone at the top. Bernie Evers, convicted of helping engineer the NCI WorldCom fraud, told underlings that a proposed code of ethics was, quote, a colossal waste of time. People in the company got the message, and that message was to find creative ways to make the numbers.
At NCI, we consistently knew what our plan or projections were for the upcoming quarter, 6 months, and year. We knew exactly the number, where the numbers had to be to meet those projections. The important thing to me personally was how I was compensated. Having a salary of approximately $75,000 at the time over $1 billion portfolio, we're talking when I was senior manager, is that my compensation was driven by stock options, which I was given by the thousands each year for my performance.
3 factors can play a major role in fraud by executives and employees. First, the degree to which preoccupation with meeting analyst expectations permeates the organization's climate. Second, the compensation and incentive plans that may encourage unacceptable, unethical, and illegal conduct. And finally, the degree of fear and pressure associated with meeting numerical goals and targets.
So Walt and his superiors would meet often to find ways to manipulate the records.
In meetings with superiors and peers, we discussed different ways in which we might be able to manipulate the records. And so it was an evolutionary sort of process more than, hey, Walt, why don't you go change the records and do this? We learned as we went. We learned as we needed to learn as well, which is very important.
What happened was Walt learned ways to help conceal uncollectible debt, which boosted the company's assets and profits.
The decision was made then to either delay some of these write-offs, start looking at ways that we could make the revenue numbers look better, to make it look like it was collectible, to make it look like it was in line with the expectations of the plan.
Walt's actions were not only unethical, they were also illegal. But like so many other people in the same situation, Walt convinced himself otherwise.
I didn't at first feel that my actions were unethical, the actions that I was taking on behalf of the company. I did not. What I perceived at the time was that we have an immediate problem that needed to be addressed, that over the long term, it could be remedied. So it was a little white lie that would cause no harm if the next quarter I could fix it. And I believe that was exactly what my superiors were thinking at the time too. Was it unethical in retrospect? Positively.
Dr. Stephen Salvo is an expert in organizational behavior and ethics. He says that although formalized codes of ethics are important, they have limitations.
One limitation is that, ironically, a code of ethics can actually work counterproductively. It's possible that a code of ethics will leave employees and executives as well believing that as long as you comply with the basics of this, you no longer have to engage in any moral analysis, that your job is done. That's a very dangerous thing to do because ethical situations are complex.
According to a National Business Ethics study, the most common ethical violations in audit are lying to supervisors, unfair treatment of employees, improper use of company resources, conflicts of interest, stealing from employers, and manipulation of books and records.
When it comes to looking at a leadership role or an example, my employees witnessed my direction to manipulate books. And I witnessed my bosses, telling me to do certain things with manipulation. So I was an influence on them, there's no doubt about it. And my actions directly influenced most likely what they did on their own.
I think there are four things that leaders can do to create a true ethical climate within an organization. The first is to lead with integrity. By example, people in organizations take their cues from the top. They respect the leaders in the organization. They believe they're there for a reason, and they are likely to follow the lead of those people. What the leaders do creates the culture in the organization, and that culture permeates everything that workers do.
When management doesn't lead with integrity, research suggests that there are 5 main reasons that employees fail to report unethical conduct. They don't believe corrective action will be taken. They don't trust that their reports will be kept confidential. They fear retaliation from supervisors or managers. They fear retaliation from coworkers. And they don't know whom to contact.
I became creative in suggestions that I would make for promissory notes or looking at accounts receivable and delaying it being written off or use of accounting codes which would give the perception that these debts in fact could be collected. That I received support from my superiors about my initiatives that I had taken, and they embraced those.
Because his superiors embraced fraud, so did Walt on a much more personal basis. With the assistance of a friend outside the company, Pablo decided to help himself to a piece of the pie. Their scheme involved the friend approaching delinquent MCI WorldCom customers and telling them that he could take care of their outstanding debt for a fee. Walt had 2 jobs. The first was to apply pressure to the delinquent customer to pay the outstanding debt.
I applied a lot of pressure to this customer to pay, knowing that this customer couldn't pay. At the same time, my counterpart on the outside, independent from MCI, would approach the same customer and say, we represent investors out of Europe who would like to invest in a telecommunications company, and we know that you're a fine, upstanding telecommunications company.
Walt said that flattery was the other trick that his partner used.
With that flattery, he was immediately in the door. Knowing that he had money, he was given the royal treatment. They would soon find out that, hey, we owe MCI money. And he would immediately say, well, we need to take care of that debt. So we don't want to give you a bunch of money yet. How about if we take care of that $2 million debt with MCI, and we'll charge you a fee of $250,000 up front for putting this deal together. We'll make sure that the debt's taken care of or paid at MCI, and then you start paying us a promissory note on this amount that you owe over a period of 2 or 3 years. It was a great plan.
The second part of Walt's plan was to get the customer's debt off of the MCI WorldCom books.
And I would go to the MCI's books. I would eliminate the $2 million that was owed by that customer. The customer would execute a promissory note with my partner on the outside to give the perception that he had made this payment to MCI and that he now owed it to him. All the money was transferred and made payable to companies in the Cayman Islands, which seemed legitimate because the investors were all European. And immediately money started to flow.
The money that flowed was about $800,000 each to Walt and his partner in crime. Initially, Walt said that he felt justified in the scheme to defraud his employer.
For a very brief period of time, right leading up to my own actions, I felt a great sense of revenge. I felt like I was getting exactly what I deserved, that my bosses had failed to give me, that the customers couldn't give me through any sort of job satisfaction, that I had finally found some niche that I was going to get what I needed, my pound of flesh. I was going to participate in this big telecom boom, and I was going to get paid. And the revenge was sweet.
A negative work environment, like in Walt's case, can increase the risk of fraud. Some factors include management that does not seem to care about or reward appropriate behavior, negative feedback and lack of recognition for job performance, perceived inequities in the organization, autocratic rather than participatory management, low organizational loyalty, unreasonable goals or budget expectations, less than competitive compensation, poor training and promotional opportunities, lack of clear organizational responsibilities, and poor communication practices within the organization.
Once the funds from delinquent MCI customers were deposited offshore for the benefit of Walt and his partner, there were two ways that they could get their money.
One was to visit down there and physically grab the money and take it, spend it, and bring some of the money back in the United States. But the most effective way that we found to get money back in the United States was to have a credit card. The credit card just looks like any other gold card, MasterCard. And money was put on the account in Grand Cayman, and I could use that card anywhere I wanted to. It was the key to $800,000 in the Cayman Islands. ATM machines, grocery store, whatever I wanted. It was extremely convenient, and it was very effective, the way to move it. You didn't have to move big money on shore to a bank or anything.
There are three types of workplace loyalty. Personal loyalty is the lowest level. It consists of the employee accepting and complying with the directives of a particular superior. Institutional loyalty is the next level, and it's organizational in nature, consisting of accepting and complying with the mission of the organization. Integrated loyalty is the highest and most virtuous level. It's idealistic in nature and constitutes genuine concern by each worker for the organization. It transcends the previous loyalties by honoring the ideals of accountability, fairness, honesty, and goodwill. Organizations should strive to this level. Walt, however, was loyal only to himself. And once he started stealing, there seemed to be no way to quit.
I was so caught up in beginning it and in the middle of it that, to be honest with you, I didn't see an end to it. I didn't see how I could ever stop doing this. I didn't see how I could ever stop watching the books to make sure that somebody didn't catch something. There was no out.
But someone eventually did catch something. Mysterious journal entries made by Walt, which made no sense. When Walt was confronted by auditors, he confessed. He says his situation is not that unusual.
This can happen to anybody. This can happen to the person that you go to your church or your temple, the person that you go to your school with, your partner, your business associate. And the end is, you can't get away with it. Your conscience won't let you get away with it. Eventually, something will happen that either will unfold because of external things, but I believe that it happened more internally. That's the way it happened to me.
All right, we'll stop it here. I think we'll get the point on the various points, right, that I was making earlier. One, it can happen to any of us, like it happened to him. Two is that if you are, again, a normal person, you can't get away with it. Eventually, something will unravel that will drive you to admit to it, to people like me that do investigations and are to set out to take you out. And also, when you just reach that stage in your own brain that puts you in a position that the deception is no longer permitted. Any questions or comments about this video? The lady on the back, yes. What's your name?
Andrew?
Good morning.
So in the court of law, how does someone even prove that an employee is willingly, really, and participating in fraud versus someone who just follows directions from the top and not really fully knowing the implications of their actions? Because Walt even said that he didn't even feel what he did was unethical, and he said it was common. So how are you able to draw such a story?
Very good question. And we're going to cover that later in the presentation, but I'll give you a little bit now. In order for a fraud to occur, there's various definitions of it. And there's 7 elements of that have to be existent in order for a fraud to be proven. If you have to have, there's 7 by definition, but you have to have a minimum of 2. They are that you have to have intent and that you also have a victim. If you have no victim, you have no fraud in terms of the courts are concerned, and then you have no intent, then you cannot prove fraud. That's the difference between an error, an accounting error, an irregularity, and just having the intention to commit a fraud. For me to walk into a court of law to answer your question, I have to be able to prove the person's state of mind. So if Gina, for example, committed a fraud, so if I'm investigating Gina for committing a fraud, I have not only, what's that? Someone said that she committed fraud.
She did commit fraud?
That's what Matt know about. Matt said you could exist at one time. So I have to be able to convince the court that Gina's state of mind was that she had the intent to commit a fraud. It's very difficult to do. You can have all the documentation that you like, transactions, testimonial evidence, documentary evidence, but if I cannot prove to the courts that Gina's intent was to do it intentionally, then I cannot go into criminal court at least and prove that. And there's other avenues. One of them is going into civil court. Did I answer your question a little bit? And then we'll get into details. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah. The concept of integrated loyalty, is that something that's mostly an academic concept, or do you kind of look for ways to implement strategies to kind of bring people together and create a sense? And is it a difficult thing to achieve in like such a large operation such as Siemens?
Yeah, so integrated loyalty really has to do with a study done by Harvard Business School called the Big Million Effect. And it says that people will do what they're expected to do. People will perform as they are expected to perform. And that has to do reversely with the tone on the top. If you expect that you're like Walt, that the people that you work for are criminals, they are crooks, they're cons, then it's okay for you to behave the same way. And it has to do with the loyalty that you have. Is it the loyalty to the company? Is it the loyalty to yourself? It's all dependent on the values that you have. Siemens has a bad history of corruption. If you type Siemens corruption scandal in Google, you will quickly find out that the company that Rod and I work for, unfortunately, has the history of being one of the biggest crooks, right, in the history of any company in the world, because of some things that we did in the past. I want to clarify, that was before I joined, right, in 2007. But the Siemens, to go to your question, Justin, what Siemens did was remarkable, and today is an honorable company. And one of the things that they did is, when a company is notified by the SEC, by the Department of Justice, by whomever, that they are going to be investigated, the first thing that they do is what? What is the first thing you think they do? I'm sorry? Well, that's what Arthur Anderson did. That's part of it, yeah, but what else? They destroy documents,
Deny it.
they deny it, but to protect themselves, what are the two things that they do? They close down shop, right? They close down, nobody gets in and out. And the other one is they call their lawyer. They call their lawyer because they want to accept what? Why do you call your lawyer?
Make him aware that you might be in legal trouble, or ask him what your options are.
Right, but legally, what do you think? You all watch movies. Why
So,
do you yourself?
information.
The what? What do you say?
Well, I guess you hear people taking the hit, so you know.
Well, that's part of it. And the reason you call your lawyer is, as a company, is you want to have attorney-client privilege. There's two concepts that are important in investigations. From the legal perspective, there's many concepts. One of them is called attorney-client privilege. And essentially, attorney-client privilege says that any prior crimes that you have committed are secret between you and your lawyer, in theory, right? So if I tell Ben that I killed Gina yesterday, and Ben is my lawyer, he cannot reveal that secret. That secret can never be revealed, and even if it's revealed, he will be sanctioned, and that cannot be used in court. That's the first reason why you always want to call your lawyer. And you want to come clean with your lawyer. You want to tell your lawyer all your misdeeds so that he's prepared to protect you, right? Because you have secret. The other one is the work product doctrine. And the work product doctrine says that the secrets between a lawyer and a client are extended to anyone that's working on their behalf. So, again, sorry to speak, but in the example of investigating Gina, if I am doing work for Siemens, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm investigating Gina on behalf of Siemens counsel, then the attorney-client privilege secret, if you will, extends to me, and therefore I have work product protection. And everything that I create as a forensic investigator, documents, ledgers, journals, records, emails, is all protected under the work product doctrine. Okay? Any questions about that? So the other thing that the company will do after they call their lawyers, they're supposed to issue something called a legal hold. A legal hold and a preservation order is the same thing. A preservation order is something that the government will issue. So if you've been investigated by, say, the FBI or the SEC, they will issue an order to the company that says you cannot destroy any documents related to A, B, C, D, and E. Like the gentleman mentioned about destroying documents. Arthur Anderson, they did it, right? Whatever they did are intentional or not is to be disputed. And that conviction was actually vacated later by the Supreme Court, but they did that. They destroyed documents, and they argued that was just part of their normal retention and destruction of documents policy. If a company is doing investigation, then they will issue something called a legal hold, and it's the same thing. A legal hold and preservation order is just here to work protecting documents. So, three important concepts that might be in your quiz or your test. One is attorney-client privilege. One is a legal hold or preservation order, and the other one is called the work product doctrine. Okay. Now, again, I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be, but if you're going to be a forensic investigator, these are all the things that you have to get to understand in order to execute your investigation. Yes, Tim. What are various ways of proving intent? The only way to prove intent is that you have, and we'll get a little bit later into the presentation about this, and I can teach it to you in 2 hours. But one of the most important things about doing an investigation is that you have to have the ability to understand deception. Okay? You have the ability to understand deception. So, hopefully, I will be able, in the example of investigating the lady, Gina, if I'm investigating her, and I have done enough work, and I have done the correct work, and I have enough evidence, I will at some point have something called an admission-seeking interview with Gina, in which I will present to Gina the information that I have gathered in a way, in a situation, in a manner that I can put Gina on a psychological state for her to admit to what she did, write it on a piece of paper, and sign her name to it. And we're very successful at doing that. It's not difficult. It's not easy to do. It's very difficult to do. But we do it a lot of times, and it depends on your work. Aside from having an admission like that, a tape, a direct witness with documents, you cannot prove it. And therefore, it takes you out of criminal court, and it puts you into civil court, which we also will go over in the presentation. It's a different burden to me. Okay? We can talk about deception now a little bit. you watch a lot of studies and videos and things like that on the internet about deception, and they tell you that if you scratch your nose, if you cross your leg, if you cross your arms, if you do these things, you are probably lying. And I tell you that none of that is true. It's not what you do; it's when you do it. It's not what you do; it's when you do it. I can teach it to you in 5 minutes, but if I'm having a conversation with Rod and I never Rod met before, and I spend 30 minutes having a conversation with Rod, after 30 minutes, I can probably ask Rod a question, and I'm 99% sure if he's lying to me or not. In the 30 minutes that we had the conversation. Okay? And I will tell you why this is important later. It's important because none of that is admissible in court. You can't go into a court and tell a judge that you were having a conversation with Rod, and we're having a discussion, and 25 minutes into the discussion, he scratches his nose, and I know he's lying to me about that topic. It's not that he scratches his nose. It's that when you lie, your body engages in a certain behavior that you don't control. Your brain, if you're not again, the caveat of this, if you're not a sociopath or a psychopath, and you're a normal human being, okay, and you engage in deception, in other words, I'm having a conversation with Matthew, and Matthew's lying to me, his body, his mannerisms, his brain enters into a stage in which you cannot control. And you display certain behavior that will tell a trained investigator that you're lying, right? That's what the police do when they do their investigations, is no different. And you can control it. Even if I'm trained in detecting the deception, I cannot lie myself in front of a trained investigator. And how is this important? This is important not because it can be taken into court. It's important because I don't have time. I have 20 cases, I have 2 people, I have to close cases every 3 months, I have pressure. And this model only helps me have a scientific roadmap, if you will, a pathway, a structure that I can say, okay, I'm investigating Rod, and I need to do what? Quickly, what do I need to do? If I get an investigation into Rod, and I have 100 investigations, what is one of the first things that I'm trying to do? Guys, come on, you watched movies before.
Get admittance,
No, I'm not there yet. I cannot prove anything yet. So what's the thing? I'm investigating Rod, and I have a lot of cases. One of the things that I want to do is I want to rule Rod out. I want to be able to say Rod didn't do it. That's one of the reasons why you want to understand deception. I want to be able to talk to Rod and investigate him a little bit and get into the conversation, and in 5 minutes into it, I think, man, this guy's full of crap. Rod didn't do it. This is a personal vendetta, and they're using me as an investigator, as a vehicle to, engage in some political agenda, which happens all the time, unfortunately. The system is abused in order to, carry out personal vendettas. And I need to be able to eliminate Rod. I don't want, why? Because I don't want to waste time. I don't have time for that. You understand why it's important to be able to understand deception. I need to rule people out, I need to move on. On the other hand, I want to know if there's a good likelihood in a balance of probabilities, which is a version that we use. It's a 51 to 49% more than likely that, based on the information that I have, Rod did engage in the fraud. Because then I really got to focus on that. Not only that, I need to have a scientific structure or tree mechanism in order to try to determine where is the problem. And you can only do that if you understand deception. Now, anyone here has ever taken a polygraph? You've taken a polygraph, okay, so don't give it out, okay, because you're taking a polygraph. But I have taken a polygraph many times, okay, for different reasons. And when you take a polygraph, if you watch the movies, you watch the movie with the fucker, with the whatever. And this is really the way that the polygraph works. I do the same thing that a polygraph examiner do. I just don't have the machine. So, what's your name?
Jun.
You're the teacher, right? The TA?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a good victim. Okay, so I'm the polygrapher, she's the person, and I'm going to put a variety of things on her body, pressure, cough, and some things around her chest to measure, respiration and movements and things like that. And so when I'm taking the polygraph, just like she had, I'm expecting some really hard questions, right? Like when I took the polygraph when I was trying to get into the FBI many years ago, and I did get an offer. I decided not to do it because they don't pay any money. But I did went through the process, and I went to the polygraph, and I was expecting some really hard questions, like Can you explain multiple elements of accounting in a software? Or can you explain how you account for, what is the accounting on a construction project, right? Something really difficult like that. That wasn't the question that I was there. So the first question that the guy asked me is, did you drive here this morning? Are you married? You have kids? Did you fly last week to whatever? Do you live in Newark? And all these really dumb questions are geared to do what?
What your mind is.
Yeah, so they're geared to disarming, number one. They're also geared toward establishing a profile. The examiner knows the answer to the question because I just spent a year filling out forms. He knows if I'm married, if I have a wife, if I have kids, if I'm whatever. He knows the answer to the question. So all he's doing is getting confirmation. It's called honesty testing. He's getting confirmation on the question that he knows. And now he's establishing a profile, right? I will do it no different. If I'm investigating Amanda, I'll have a discussion with Amanda, and I can assure you that the first 35 to 40 minutes of the conversation is completely worthless. It means nothing. It's me trying to disarm Amanda and having a discussion with her, getting her credibility, right? And also trying to establish a profile. I need to know quickly who is Amanda based on the information that I have in this very limited amount of time because we don't have a lot of time. And then the polygraph really asks the question he wants to ask. Have you ever done anything to have you ever engaged or participated in any activities to dethrone the U.S. government, for example? Have you ever engaged in any terrorist activity? Have you ever sold secrets to a foreign government? And then he switches back to, did you eat a lollipop this morning? Are you wearing pink, a pink sweater? So you understand, that's no different. Now, my case is a little bit more complicated because I am married to a foreign person. I am married to someone who wasn't born here. So in one of my polygraphs to get my top secret clearance, I was asked later on, one of the questions is, do you have any kind of personal or family relationship with a person from a foreign government? Someone that could be considered an enemy of the state? And my answer is yes, right? Because I am sleeping with someone who might be considered, she's not, but an enemy of the state. So in that context, it doesn't matter what the answer is. It only matters if you give the right answer. So if the guy asks you, Matthew, did you beat up your wife last night? And you did, and you said yes. He doesn't care about the fact that you beat her up, right? Because the polygraph in itself is not admissible in court. He cannot walk out of there and arrest you for that. What's important is that if you said no, then the machine goes off. My point is we do the same thing in forensic examinations. It's no different. So now I have told you what? I have told you that anyone can commit a fraud. You, me, your mom and dad, your kids, your neighbors, your grandma. I told you what? What else I told you? I told you that you cannot get away with it. I told you that you have to be a lawyer, right? Or kind of like a lawyer in order to understand the different aspects of an investigation. And I even gave you a little bit of deception. All in 40 minutes. Did I earn my money today? Okay, good. Any questions so far? Yes?
So in the video, what follows that it used 3 strategies to commit fraud. And the first was to find customers who had debt. 2 was lottery, and 3 was to issue get the debt of both sides. So how is this different from any business problem strategy solution? So that you just got caught is comparing monitoring.
Yeah. So she was watching the video. Right, she gets class participation. Yeah.
No debt.
She was so you mentioned some very good points. The first one is that Walt, he told you from the beginning that, again, to make the point that you cannot get away with it, right? But in this instance, when he asked, when he talks about how the fraud happened and why he did it, he also explained that he did it with a strong desire to do what? To do revenge. And that goes off. That's all part of the interview when you try to get an admission from someone. You're trying to establish why he did it. And therefore, it was through the phone on the top. You have the question of how is it different than any business on a normal day-to-day basis. It's not different. Because the fact is that fraud is consistent in any organization. If all of you have a job, fraud exists in all of your companies. It's just the nature of doing business. And that's why you take classes like this in order to try to do that. Okay. Any other questions?
Good question.
Yes, sir.
I'll talk about credibility. How do you find credibility within the ones who are prestigious, especially with fraud?
Credibility of who?
Credibility of the person that's stating profession.
Well, to me, it really doesn't matter because I'm going to establish the credibility of the person. So if I'm interviewing you, the fact is that, and we'll try to talk later, we have limited time, but I will never talk to anyone as long as I don't have to talk to anyone. So I could be investigating for 1 month, 1 day, 1 year, 10 months. On the background, I'm reading emails. I have our guys go into your hard drive remotely and read it. We go into the server, read emails, we get all your emails now. There's a lot of techniques. Because you never want to talk to anyone unless you absolutely have to. You try to do all the work that you can until the point that you reach and you say, you know what, there's nothing else I can do. I need to go talk to Raquel. I'm investigating Raquel. And there's nothing else that I can do to try to get the answers to my questions. And hopefully, you have done enough work that you have established a concept, which we'll talk about it later in the presentation, called predication. Predication is the same thing as probable cause and reasonable suspicion. So in law enforcement, the FBI, local police departments, they call it probable cause. They call it reasonable suspicion. In corporate white-collar crime, we call it predication. And predication is nothing more than the existence of the totality of the circumstances. And it says that based on me being trained, on the evidence that I have, on the interviews that I have done, on the information that's being presented, I have enough information to continue. And hopefully I have done that through the investigation. I'm investigating Raquel. I came up with enough facts in order to determine if Raquel did it. And now I have to go talk to Raquel. I have nothing else I can do. Now, if Raquel is the suspect, am I going to talk to Raquel first or last? Yeah. Who said I would talk to Raquel last? Who said that I would talk to Raquel first? No one is raising their hand. Okay. If I'm investigating Raquel, who said that I would talk to Raquel at the beginning? At the end. At the end, right? You always talk to your suspect at the end. Why? First, I may only get one chance to speak with her. Right? I want to have the element of surprise, and this is why I investigate as much as I can without talking to a single soul. Once I have enough information, I will talk to Raquel, and hopefully Raquel will want to talk to me more than once. But I may only get one shot. And the answers that she gives me now, after your questions, are related to credibility. Because I think I have the element of surprise that she doesn't know. The other thing that is, she might lawyer up after that. After I talk with her the first time, she might say, I'm not answering any more questions. I'm an attorney. And I will say what? I will say, I don't care if you want to have an attorney or not, because I'm not a police officer. This is not law enforcement. You work for my company. And my company has said to me that I need to investigate you. So you can get all the lawyers that you want, but this conversation continues. The question is, do you want to be part of it or not? If you don't want to be part of it, you can leave, right? I cannot tell you in this room, but that all goes here toward, again, answering your question, which is, hopefully I have done enough work to know the answer to most of the questions. I just don't know the answer to, if I ask 15 questions, maybe I know the answer to 10. I know the answer to, I need the answer to maybe 3. 2 of the questions are meaningless. You just don't know which ones are because you don't know the order or what I know. Hopefully, you don't know what I know. Make sense? It's all a technique. It's no different than anything else. Any other questions so far? Are we doing on time? Yeah, doing good. Okay, so 7 parts of a fraud. It has to be a representation. If I decide today to commit the dumbest crime in history, which is to rob a bank, that's not a fraud. Why is that not a fraud?
You're really hiding what you're doing.
Yes, sir. What's your name, sir?
Jared.
Gary, what is it?
You're not really hiding what you're doing here. Robbing a bank.
That's one of the things. So, right now, I am doing a project for Rod. So Rod's my boss. So tomorrow I submit an expense report, and the expense report says that I had a $300 meal last night. And I have a receipt. And I give that to Rod. But I know that I didn't have that meal, and Rod approves it. I made a representation, right? I told Rod I had the meal. So a representation, you have to have an action that you take, mostly with documents, to have a fraud. If I walk into, again, if I'm stupid enough to commit a bank robbery, why is the bank robbery the dumbest crime in history?
Banks are usually very secure and
which leads to, that's not the answer, but you're getting close.
You're more likely to get caught
you always get caught. No more likely, you will get caught and probably killed. So you never get away with it, and you probably counting your days. Your life expectancy goes significantly gets reduced if you commit a bank robbery. And number two, but we that study fraud, why do you think that's the other dumbest reason?
Well, you can't commit it from afar, a bank robbery. You have to be there in person, who's right there in the middle of the fraud. You can do it from multiple angles and set apart from the crime itself.
Right. So you always get caught, right? And what else?
The penalty is usually more severe.
Right.
I was gonna say you have one chance to grab as much money as you can, and you probably can't grab as much.
That's the answer. You never get enough money. So as a fraud, and this goes to your point, Matt, right? The point that Matt made, you can be sitting like Walt in his office. Now, here's the biggest red flag of any fraud that I have ever heard. The guy how much did he tell you that he made in the video? He told you how much he made. $75,000. Not a lot of money, right? But he also told you what? Right after that, the next sentence. He told you he made $75,000 and what? He got it in the millions. That's exactly right. That's the right answer. Thanks. That's a red flag. So if you're making 100 and you're getting 100, 200,000 on stock, okay. But if you're making 75 and you're getting millions of dollars on fraud stock options, that tells you that your company has no cash. You're not going to get the money. Right? Now, from the accounting perspective, that's the way you should be thinking. This is a red flag of fraud. This equation doesn't make sense. Right? It's like if you have increased inventory, you should have increased revenue, right? If you have decreased inventory, increased revenues, there's something wrong. It doesn't make sense. So it doesn't mean there's a fraud. It means that you have to check it out. You have to take it upstairs. So I work with Rock, and even though he's 20 years older than me, but then in this scenario, we're the same age, right? Now he's not 12 years older than me, but if Rod and I are the same age, we went to the same school, we work for the same company, and we even share an office. I don't know how much Rod that makes, but I have a good idea, right, of what he makes and what I make. And we don't make anything because Sima doesn't pay any money, right? So we don't make a lot of money, but it's okay. And then tomorrow I show driving a Mercedes, and then Rod shows up driving his Prius. He does that. He shows up driving his Prius. Does that mean I'm committing a fraud? No. It doesn't mean I'm committing a fraud. I could be married to a brain surgeon. I could have a girlfriend that has money. I could have a trust fund. It just means that I'm doing something that's not normal, right? It's like the cops. They look for people that are doing something out of the ordinary. They call it lottery and prowling. So they're driving around tonight, and they see the guy at 2 o'clock in the morning standing behind the convenience store. Does it mean the guy's committing a crime? No, it could be the attendant that works in the store. He just walked outside to smoke, right? But the cop has to do what? He has to check it out. And that's what we do as fraud examiners. We look for red flags, and anytime that anybody will have told me, I make $75,000 and I get millions of dollars of fraud, those people were slept at the wheel. And it's no different than the example of me and Rod. It means that someone should say something about it, and then someone should check it out. So you have to have a representation, okay? You cannot be something like robbing a bank. You have to have a document, and you have to have intent to deceive someone. It has to be about a material point. Now, we work for a $100 billion company. So if you commit a $5, $10, maybe $50 million fraud, I don't know, you know better than I right on that, but it's probably immaterial to us, right? It's what did we call it the other day? It's a burger and fries. I think that's what we're talking about. You commit a $20 million fraud, it's probably burger and fries for us. Why? We have profit of what? Worldwide. $5 billion profit, right? Now, we have small subsidiaries. We have, I think we had 1,800 companies, right? It was brought down to 1,000. So we have 1,000 companies, 1,000 set of books, 1,000 checkbooks, 1,000 bank accounts, 1,000 CEOs, CFOs, controllers, right? It gets complicated. And maybe one of those companies, like, I don't know, maybe PLM, one of our smaller companies, maybe for them that's material. So materiality is really established by the company itself. In some cases, it's established by the government. We don't typically look into things like the example that I gave, expense reporting fraud. Why? That's another dumb fraud. Mainly because you really can't get away with a lot of money. You can do it, and over time it can add up, but it's not a good fraud to do. It has to be false. It has to be intentional, and I have it underlined. It has to be believed, you have to have a victim, and you have to have damage. So, in order for me to prove a fraud in criminal court, not in civil court, but in criminal court, I have to prove that it was intentional, which is not an easy burden to meet, and that it has to be, there was a victim. Any questions on this?
Yeah.
I notice there's more people now. This is great. We have like, somehow the people show up. I didn't think of it. Yes.
I was wondering, because you said you're not like actually trying to convict people. Like, do you have more discrepancy at like, does it intend for you not have to be as severe as say like the law? Like, do you just have to prove that it's more likely than not that this person is like doing something wrong?
Yeah. So just to correct the statement, I am trying to convict people, right? The problem is not that I'm not trying to convict. The problem is the people is that I have parameters, right? That I have to work with. But in any company, it works the same way. And the fact is what? I'm going to share a couple of interesting realities with you. The first one is that most companies don't prosecute their offenders. So I do an investigation today. I'm investigating Ling, right? And Ling, I proved that she did it. I have I have testimonial evidence. 3 people came out, pointed the finger at her and said she did it, right? And they put it in writing. I have documents. She's on tape. I was able to place her on that place, on that day, at that time. However I did, right? But I might go to my company and say I work for Rod, and I say, hey Rod, we discovered this fraud, we proved it. And Rod will say, thank you Ariel for the information. We'll take it from here. Right? And that's okay. I want him to take it from there. Why? I don't want to be. I don't want to be involved in both sides of the investigation. I only want to be involved in one or the other. And in this instance, I'm in charge only of investigating. But the company makes a decision. So Rod I would never know what happened. One day I see Rod in the elevator and say, "Hey, what happened to the girl Ling from your class that we investigated for the fraud?" And Rod says, "Well, he will say it's none of your business because it's really not." But what he might say is, "Look, the company decided that we didn't want to prosecute her." And that's what most companies do, unfortunately, it's the reality of life. And they do it for a lot of different reasons. Negative publicity in the newspapers, legal costs to defend the case. So they'd rather go to Ling and say, hey Ling, you stole $1 million from me. Can we have an agreement that you pay me back $1 million? I throw in some interest, and then I'll let you resign. And you leave, so you alleviate my problem, and then I alleviate yours. The problem now, what happens with Ling? Ling goes to work for Microsoft, whoever, another company, and she'll do it again. She got away with it once, and then the next time she does it bigger. She doesn't have a criminal conviction. No one knows about it. No one can talk about it. There's an agreement in place. Everybody's afraid of getting sued. So I call Ling from Microsoft and say, hey, I'm looking on the references from Ling. Oh, she was great. This is what she did. This is her name, title, serial number. I said nothing else. Why? I can't. U.S. law prohibits disclosure of that. Unless Ling has given written permission. I cannot even disclose her salary without getting written permission from her. Okay? This is the reality of life. The second one is this. Every time you go fill out an employment application, it says what? Somewhere in the application, when you sign, it says that if you were convicted of a crime, but it also talks about they're going to do a background check. Right? The fact is that 90% of employers, or 90% of the people that apply for jobs, do not have a background check conducted. Why is that? Cost. Right. Now, any idiot can go on the internet for $6.99, run a background check on someone that you want. You can go on the internet and pay $6.99, run a background check on someone, and you'll get some information. I'll question the quality of it, but some of it might be correct, some of it might be incorrect, some of it you don't know. You have to check it out. To do the background checks that we do in investigation, which is law enforcement level, and it's very hard to get, you're in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. Which employer is going to run a $10,000 or $5,000, $10,000 background check on someone? None of the others they have to. Law enforcement, of course, they do. Any law enforcement agency. Anyone that has interaction with children. Although I also question that because some of the background checks that they do, they're not the best. Anyone that needs to be licensed, for example, not even lawyers and CPAs, to be honest with you, to get your actual license. They just ask you the question, have you committed a crime? But they don't run the background checks. So it's really the employer. If you work with children, if you're a doctor, if you work in a healthcare setting, if you work for any financial institution, they do a real background check. Other than that, if you have backgrounds in your background, there's a good chance you're going to get away with it. Why? Because nobody will know about it. And that is the reality of how America works.
If you come forth and check, I have committed a crime, and the company still does that mean they're more likely to conduct a background check on you?
Very good point. And the point here, Justin, is not actually that point. The point is that they covered themselves already. Because they hire you, but you signed a paper. 10 years ago when you were hired, you signed a paper that said, I authorize a background check to be run. So if at some point, for whatever reason, your girlfriend turns you in, right? Or something like that. Or your ex-wife, whatever happens. And you get a tip. And they run a background check, they're covered because you were signed 10 years ago. Not only that, they hold that against you for life. Now, I had a recent case. I won't say which company, but we had 7 letters on the company, and then the letters blue. Is that Siemens? No. So I was doing an investigation in a country where, and I have to be careful what I can say, but this guy essentially, he couldn't meet the immigration requirements. This is what the investigation is about. He couldn't meet the investigation requirements to enter this country. So say I live in the United States and I work for Ariel, and I say, hey Ariel, I got an opportunity for you in Russia. So I have to go through the immigration process, right? And now I work for a long time for Siemens now, and while I go through the immigration process to go to Russia, it comes up that I have the situation that you described. I have a criminal background. Nobody knows about it. Why? Nobody checked. And now I cannot enter that country because the country is saying, we don't want this guy here, he's a criminal. Now you get 2 problems. I like the company, they don't know what to do about it, but now they need me in Russia and I can't go because, I have a background. So, as the employer, what should I do? I should fire the guy, right? Who said that I should fire the guy? Well, you have nothing to investigate. You already determined that this guy is a liar, he's a criminal. He lied to you, right? And not only that, he embarrassed you. Because he said he was going to go to Russia to do this, and now he can't, you spend a bunch of money. But what does the company do? They say, well, we really want this guy, so instead of firing him, what we're going to do is, we're going to, by the way, this person hadn't actually started working for Siemens, and this is a situation where he worked for another company, we wanted to hire him, but he couldn't pass the immigration laws of this country, and in order to say, we don't want to be associated with you because you do have a background, what we said is, okay, we'll hire you through an employment agency. Do you understand? So now, if we did that, if we hired a person through an employment agency, the person now works for me, from the country originally that he's from, but he's willing to work for that country remotely, and that's how I get away with it, right? That's a fraud. I have made a representation about something I should have done. It's more complicated than that. I'm leaving it in detail, but that goes back to your question. Okay? Yes. What's your name?
I'm Caitlin.
Caitlin, okay.
I'm just curious, so when you do find fraud, are you saying that you're only always allowed to just report it back to the company, or can you report this to like law enforcement as well, or like the police, or because the company hired you?
So your question is a good one, has many answers. But the right answer is, my only obligation is to report to my employer. So I'm a certified fraud examiner, and in order to keep my license, I have to tell the truth. So my only obligation is to go to my company and say, this guy committed a fraud. What you want to do about it is not my problem. Okay? Now, personally, you can take it up, you can report it to the government or do other things, but you don't have an obligation. Your obligation is to report it, and then it's up to the company to do whatever they want. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that it's a waste of time to be in fraud examination because nothing is ever done. I'm saying that most of the times, that's how things are dealt with, unfortunately. And that's just are the realities of life. Because fraud is so complex that the people committing the fraud are smarter than those investigating those that are committing the fraud. That's why when you write an investigations report, you never write the word fraud on it. You never talk about the existence or the lack of fraud in any report. You tell a story. I went to this country to investigate this guy that couldn't pass the immigration process, and this is what I found. I never said he did it. I never said he didn't do it. None of my reports will ever say he's guilty, he's innocent, he did it, he didn't do it. All I say is I was sent here to investigate something. This is what I did. This is what I found. It's up to you to decide what to do, right? Because if you said that someone did something and they did it, if you say that someone did something and there's no room for error, but you're in that 1%, or if you accuse someone of having done a fraud and it goes to court, they did it, but you lose. Guess what's going to happen? You get sued. I get sued. Personally. Hopefully Siemens will defend me. Maybe not. Right? Maybe they throw me under the bus. I don't know. It never happened. But that's what happens. And that's why, as an investigator, you never go on a limb. Law enforcement can do it. Prosecutors can do it. Investigators and corporate can't. They just tell a story and then let someone else decide. Okay, moving on. So I want to talk a little bit about the differences. Some of you might be interested in audit careers. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the differences between audit and fraud examination. It's not the same thing. An auditor more than likely works with a work plan. And the work plan is on a piece of paper, and the piece of paper has 10 boxes. And the 10 boxes have to be checked. So I go to Amanda today and say, hey Amanda, I'm an external auditor, can I have a copy of your balance sheet? She gives me the balance sheet, I looked at it, and I do what? Put a check mark. Will you believe me if I tell you that my only obligation as the external auditor is to make sure that she has enough documentation to prove that test passes? That's all my obligation. And then I go to the next step. So now I go to Shanghai.
Yes.
So hey Shanghai, you have a copy of the bank account, of your bank accounts in Panama from the year 2012. Yes, I do. Let me see it. Makes sense? I put another check mark. And at the end of the 10 questions, I'm done. I move on to my next client. I'm busy. I have too many audits. I have a budget. That's how external audit works. External auditors have no obligation, except in very few circumstances, to investigate or determine fraud. That's not their job. They're not authenticators, and they have no obligation to do so. Forensic auditors work a little bit different. If I go to Amanda on the same example and I ask her to give me a copy of the bank account statement, I'm less interested on the information that's in the document and more interested on the answers that she gives me, how she gives them to me, and in authenticating the document, even before I get to the transactional level detail. Does it make sense that the bank account is printed on this kind of paper? This document is dated June 6, 1984. June 6, 1984 was a Saturday. It's a likelihood that someone in that industry, in that company, worked on a Saturday. These are all the things that forensic auditors do to authenticate the information before they get to the meat of the matter. And the rest ones you can read yourself, and mostly, obviously, I'm to the right. And the most important being that you have to have proof. It's not what I know; it's what I can prove. If I cannot prove it, even though I know that he did it, she did it, my answer is that I don't know. My answer is that he didn't do it. Why? I have no proof to say otherwise. There's many frauds. You have marriage frauds, bankruptcy fraud, many kind of different frauds. For the purposes of today, we're talking about occupational fraud. And occupational fraud is the using of your employer's assets in order to further some kind of personal advantage. So, occupational fraud, again, is used, that might be the test I heard, which is occupational fraud is the using of the company's assets to advance a personal interest or a personal advantage. And you have two kinds. You have on behalf of the company and against the company. So who can give me one example of a crime committed on behalf of the company? One crime on behalf of the company. And who is the victim? Justin, give me one, man. Come on. Okay, you think. The lady in the back that's answering all the questions. Enron. Okay, so that's a good one. Enron, what they did is, Enron had special purpose entities set up. And there were accounts of the books, right, of the balance sheet. And that was essentially their fraud. It's more complicated than that, but essentially, that's what they were doing. If you have a chance to read a good book called The Smartest Guys in the Room by Bethany McLean and Paul Ekman, it has a lot of good information on that. But yeah, so the better example of a crime on behalf of the company is financial statement fraud. And who's your victim? Shareholders, right? Shareholder is your victim, so you have fraud, and you also have fraud committed by the company. You have documents, It's undisputable because the accounting transactions have taken place. All the books accounts existed, right? You have admissions, so you meet all the elements. And then you have the victims, which are the shareholders. And then you have crimes committed against the company. Such as what? Who can give me a couple? Which one? No, Welcome was on behalf. Right? Welcome was, what was Welcome? So Welcome was an account called prepaid capacity. Right? And back in the early 2000s, late 1990s, companies started buying wire, copper wire that ran underground. And a lot of it run right by my house in Virginia. I live right near the internet corridor, the internet boom where everything went bust. And they said their argument was, and it's plausible, that buying these lines, known as prepaid capacity, for later on many years, for now to transmit internet and communications, were assets, right? And that's what they did. That was that crime. They were capitalizing expenses on accounts called prepaid capacity. Yes?
An example of one that's against the company is like, it's a silly example, but in the movie Office Space, the crime they committed is like...
Yeah, well, stealing stuff, right? I mean, it's a good example. It can be stealing computers. You work for IBM, and IBM disposes of laptops, and this is a real case that I work. They have thousands, millions of laptops that they disposed of after the employees use them. And one guy said, hey, if I can get on the back end of the disposal process, then I can take those laptops and put it on the black market and sell them, resell them. And now I'm making $1 million a year on something that I didn't buy. So that's a good example. Vendor fraud. You work for the company, you're the purchasing manager, you're getting a kickback in order to select that company to give services to your company. You do a sole source contract in which you're supposed to have a bidding process based on policy, but you don't follow the bidding policy because you want to give the contract to the organization. Things like that. On inferior quality, the construction of a building, you're supposed to have a certain quality of material, right, so that people don't die, but you decide to purchase it from somebody else. Or the products that you felt had quality, they do not. So now they have inferior quality. That's another example of a fraud against the company. Yes, ma'am. Joyce.
No, I just heard Pearson Publishing Books. There was a collusion between some of the employees, so they were creating purchase orders. And it was a working person in the warehouse, the receiver, the person who actually receives the money.
Yep.
So that because there is a segregation of duties, however, if you have 3 or 4 people that do those works and are in it together, it's like a massive asset, and so they're doing an investigation. I don't know if they're going to go public on that.
Yeah, and this kind of fraud is very basic, right? I mean, it happens every day. And you bring a good point. And the good point is, and by the way, you beat me to one of my slides, so I'll cover it now, which is, I might not have any slides left, I don't know. But the point is that if you have collusion, then you can be Sherlock Holmes. It doesn't matter. You get away with it. If you have 2 people that circumvent the control systems, then there's no way to really prevent that. I mean, somebody has broken way into your control system, then they'll get away with it. Yes, Douglas.
How would you classify the findings of conflicts of interest? Organization, I mean, you gotta,
But that's not really, I don't know, I will say probably that's not really occupational fraud, which is the fraud we're talking about today. Because he had his own company. It was a Ponzi scheme, so he took money from some people to pay others. I wouldn't classify it as occupational fraud. Yes, Kevin?
Yeah, what about that trader at UBS?
Same. Yeah, same. Well, I say except that actually that could be on behalf of the company if the company was involved, right? But he used the money from the investors.
What about something like insurance fraud?
Again, it depends on the circumstances. Anybody else? It's really warm in here. Is it just me, or am I going to pass out?
Keep going.
I'm fat, but I'm not that fat. I'm sweating like a pig. So, 3 kinds of occupational fraud categories. And this is the things that you will investigate in occupational fraud. It has to fit into one of these 3 categories. You have asset misappropriation, you have bribery and corruption, which is corruption, and you have financial statements fraud. So on the examples given by a couple of people earlier, MCI, Enron, I give some other ones, Sunbeam, Tyco, Kmart, HealthSouth, AIG, all these frauds are financial statements fraud. And this is the category that you have less of them, you have less frauds, significantly less of them, but you have the greatest impact. Because by the push of a button or the stroke of a pen, you can really do some damage and make some serious money, right? Versus the stupid robbing the bank example. You have corruption, and corruption is mainly three things. The first one is bribes. So I work for a company that's trying to get a contract with the Colombian government. I can't get it because I'm not competitive enough. I don't have access, political access. So I go to the Colombian government, for example, and I say, how much is it going to take for me to get this contract? How much is it going to take for me to get access to the floor on the bid? I pay, I get a copy of it, tomorrow morning, surprise me in the mail, and now I'm able to be competitive to participate. So that's actually bid reading. A bribe will be what we did, right? What Siemens did. This is public information, I'm not telling you anything that's not public. So a bribe is where you pay someone, mainly a government official, a foreign government official, in order to obtain an unreasonable advantage, right? As the example that I gave the Colombian government. Or it can be as simple as me carrying 2 suitcases of cash. In Spanish, there's a concept called el valijero. It's a guy that's carrying 2 suitcases of money, with millions of dollars inside. And literally, I will walk through the Buenos Aires airport, Ezeiza airport, with my suitcases full of cash, and I will deliver the cash to someone in exchange for a contract. Or it can be padding invoices. I hire a law firm. The law firm delivers legal, actual services, and then they pay bribes for me. And then they invoice me, which is the beauty of it. So I pay them for the bribe, a fee, because not anything free, right? And then the actual amount that you of their services. And of course, that's fraud, that's a bribe. And then you have asset misappropriation. We don't do much of that. That's stealing a laptop, stealing from the petty cash box, stealing computers. There's not a lot of money on that. My team doesn't look into that. 2 sides of law that are involved in fraud investigation. Yes?
I'm sorry, I was curious about bribes. How is it different from lobbying or constant lobbying?
The difference is that lobbying, if it's lobbying, the way it's supposed to be done, lobbying is legal. You have to be registered. You have to be qualified and things like that. So a lot of people argue that's a form of fraud. But lobbying, it means exactly that if you think about it. Lobbying is almost a fraud that's legal, right? Because you're paying to engage in some services to get a certain advantage. That's what they call a lobbying, because it's legal and it's registered for it. So did I answer your question? So 2 sides of criminal and 2 sides of law, criminal and civil. I always, investigators always try to take cases to criminal court. In criminal court, the purpose is to take someone's freedom away from them. So anytime that you try to incarcerate anyone, that's a very difficult burden to meet. Very, very difficult burden to meet. And if I can prove a case in criminal court, then I will take it to civil court, because civil court is about getting restitution and damage payments, and that's a much lower burden to meet, and therefore that's typically where fraud examiners take their cases. These are the main differences. On the criminal law, you're trying to remedy a wrong and therefore take somebody's liberty. On the other one, you're trying to obtain money. That's what it comes down to. You're trying to obtain money. So we will sue an employee for their car, their bank account, their jewelry, any possessions that they have, their vacation home, their boat, in order to get some restitution for what they did to us. In a criminal case, it has to be absolute. There can be no room for errors. Everybody has to agree that you did it, and they're going to convict you. That's, again, very difficult to do. In civil court, it's only the majority of the people. So if you have 12 and 7 agree that you're guilty, if you have 2 agree that you're guilty, then it's a much easier conviction to get.
They're going to turn it down, so they'll be able to hang meat here in a half hour.
Okay. Why people commit fraud? We watched the video of all, but I'll give you some examples. The first one is a video of a person that worked for Siemens. Okay, it's a person that worked for Siemens, and he witnessed a fraud and then reported it. So he talks about what he went through. And I'm not going to run the whole thing, but we'll do maybe, I think, the first 5-10 minutes.
The management within Norway at that time decided.
Again, this is a real Siemens employee, okay? This really happened. This is not an artist.
To increase their profit without informing the Norwegian defense, and increase it far more than what the contract allowed. And that was the start of this, and I discovered it very early. I saw the figures right away, actually.
And you knew that they were, the term we use is cooking the books.
Yes, and the thoughts I had at the time was, this is strange. Is this how we are doing business in the private sector? Because I was just myself a new employee at Siemens. Then it started to bother me because there was beginning to be a lot of millions in our system that I knew belonged to our customer. And I felt that I had to bring the matter up with my superior. So I asked him very carefully, what plans do you have with these millions?
The surplus.
That's surplus, yes. That's in our balance. In our accounting system. And he only said that this was a topic that was none of my concerns. It went additional 2 or 3 months after that, and we received these ethical guidelines from Siemens headquarters in Germany. But I read that you have to bring forward matters which concerns unlawful things, like what we were doing, based on these ethical guidelines, and that I had to sign a name under it. I felt really much more obliged to do something about the matter.
You were convinced at this point that this was illegal.
Yeah, I knew that this was illegal.
This wasn't just an accounting error.
No. It was a conscious act from, not only the top management, but several people within Siemens. 24th of September, the management received a written report from me. And this report said that the contract was, Siemens violated it. But instead, about 10 days later, I could see that this money was booked in Siemens. And then the swindle was a fact. There was no way back. In December 2003, I decided to report the matter to Siemens headquarters in Germany, also Siemens Business Services. And I chose to report this anonymously. It was after I reported to Germany, the story really begins. I noticed that some of the directors didn't want to talk to me. There were some strange episodes during this time that made me feel that something was wrong. And eventually, after about 14 days, I received an email where I was summoned to a meeting with the rest of the management the same day. And the agenda for the meeting wasn't revealed. I remember I went out of the office to go to this meeting, and I was stopped by the division director, who said I had to wait until he was ready. He was standing in the elevator. I remember I asked him if he knew what this meeting was about, because I already was anxious and thought it might be because of this report I had forwarded to Germany. And he just mumbled, he didn't tell anything. We came up, stood in front of the meeting door, and I asked him to go in before me, because I said I had to go get a cup of coffee or something, but I really needed to build up courage to walk into this meeting room. And I did a minute or two later, as the last person. The room was filled with people, but there was a total silence. No one spoke a word. I watched the top management was sitting on the far end of this table, meeting table, and they were looking at me with hatred in their eyes. And then I, of course, knew what this meeting was about. And I tried to find a place as far away from these guys as possible, but there were none. There was only 2 available seats on the CEO's right hand. So I had to walk around the table and in this silence and really waiting for my execution. And it came while I sat down. The CEO raised up and threw my report, my confidential report, on the table and screamed out, "We have a mole in our system, high up. We will expose him and fire him. We know that this report has been sent from the head post office in Oslo, but we will not stop at that. We will find this man and throw him out." And while he said this or screamed it out, he was looking at me.
Okay, so I think you get the point, right? That he, what happened to this gentleman. Fortunately for him, he sued and got a lot of money from the company for the way he was treated. But that's the realities of life, right? He tried to do the right thing, and that's the justice that he had. Some myths that are interesting that I wanted to share with you. And the first one is, the reason that this happened, the fraud happened, is that companies believe that they hire honest people. And I already told you what? I already told you that very few companies do background checks. And I already also told you that when employees commit a fraud, there's a good likelihood that they're going to be transferred to another place. So the problem doesn't get resolved, it gets transferred to another person to deal with. But these are some of the statistics that PwC came up with. Over 30 years old, so it doesn't apply to us, right? Because you're good at that. Most male, something females. In some presentations, I have had some females saying, "Hey, we can be crooks too." But we don't know why it's 55 male, 45% female. I actually know what that is. There's studies that say that women are underrepresented in some categories for whatever unfair reason, and that's why.
I'm going to show a chart later. It does vary by countries too. In Canada, more women commit fraud than men for some reason. So we'll talk about that. I'm going to show the AICPA.
I keep telling my wife she's a crook. Okay. It's the appearance of a family situation. Is the house, you have a house in the suburbs, it has a white picket fence, you have a dog, a cat, a turtle, you go to church on Sundays, you walk your dog, you bake cakes for your neighbors. So, everything is fine, right? It's a normal situation. You have, like Walt, you're a CPA, MBA, work for a great company. You have no criminal record. Why? You did it before, as in the case of Ling, and her case got transferred to somebody else. You have a good psychological health. You're not a psychopath, you're not a sociopath. And you are in a position of trust. In order to be able to access the information, you have to be at the right level. And most of the time, the people that you're investigating, unfortunately, they know more than you do about their systems, about the accounting. Not only that, it's more complex. Not only are there potentially CPAs and accountants, most of them are former auditors, right? So they know a lot of what you already know. The external auditors will find fraud. I told you already why that was. That's not going to happen because external auditors are not trained to do fraud detection. It's not their obligation. And here I am aligned with Dr. Wells and Dr. Albrecht, and these are two of the most known scholars in fraud. And one is, first is that the accounting industry is ill-equipped to deal with the fraud problem. The accounting profession is ill-equipped. And number two, that you need education. Education is the cornerstone, as a lot of you are sitting in this class, to prevent fraud. And fraud happens to other people. And the very best mechanism is to not do what we said in the example of Lane, which is transfer the problem. You don't do that. You investigate openly and you tell everybody about it. I can assure you that if you knew what happened to the people that were investigated in your company, as in the case of Lane, and you will have to face your wife, your kids, your girlfriend, and tell her what you did, right? Because it's public information. Then you have a good reason why not to do that.
Let me just make a comment here on this thing. You know, we keep talking in this class about this idea of preventing fraud with this perception of monitoring. And that's what that slide talks about there. So we've got to figure out how to do that. And you ain't doing that by doing periodic, non-statistical sampling in audits. You know, it's not going to happen that way. So that's why we need to move this bar for everyone.
I talked about this earlier, but the fraud triangle, again, pressure, motivation, rationalization, and that is the three things that you need. You can have pressure, but if you don't have the ability to rationalize, you're not going to do it. If you have pressure, but you don't have the opportunity, your company's controls are tight, you can commit the fraud. We talked already about examples of financial pressures, and that's situations that will lead you to need extra money. Work-related pressures, your boss is pressuring you because they want to meet certain results, and therefore he's asking you to take certain actions, like cooking the books. We're not going to watch this video because we don't have time. And I think, Rod, we're probably out of time at this point. You want me to just do it?
Yeah, we're going to take a break here. I'm sorry, no, we got another 10 minutes or so.
10 minutes? Okay. Collusion. So you have more than one person together cooperating with each other. It doesn't matter if you're the FBI, Sherlock Holmes. You're not going to be able to detect that fraud because you have two people that are circumventing the system, just like Walt did in his example. There was somebody on the inside and somebody on the outside. So one person, he knew who owed money, right? So he will call the person with pressure, and then the guy from the outside, completely unrelated to him, will call the same person and say, hey, by the way, can I help you out, in any way? I know you're a good, decent company. Can we help you out in paying the money that you owe to WorldCom? Let's talk about fighting fraud. And what I like to do is I like to actually skip to the investigation portion before we run out of time. In order to investigate, you have to have something called predication, right? And predication, as I said earlier, is the totality of the circumstances. The existence of sufficient facts which will lead a prudent, trained, and reasonable fraud examiner that an investigation should be started or actually stopped, that he doesn't have predication to investigate, and that the investigation should not continue. Reasons to investigate, it could be a 1080 investigation, so say that your auditor is KPMG uncovered a situation that must be investigated, they can order you as their audit client to do a 10A investigation. And if you don't, they can do a couple of things. One is they can report that to the NCC. The other one is they can drop you as an audit client. And obviously no public company wants to see tomorrow morning in the newspaper that the auditor dropped them because they saw fraud was occurring and they did not engage in their 10A investigations. I have done some of those on behalf of my former clients. You have allegations of fraud, it could be management reviews, but the biggest one is what? Fraud is not really discovered by chance. It's not discovered by auditors. It's discovered by tips and complaints. Someone calls the hotline, just like the one we have, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It can be accessed internally or externally. All the languages of the world are represented, and you can call in any language and talk to anybody 24 hours a day from anywhere and report a potential fraud. Now, let's be clear, we get thousands of allegations. And the vehicle, unfortunately, again, is used for abuse. So I work for Rod. Rod gives me a bad employee evaluation. I turn around and I call a complaint on Rod on the hotline, right? Rod is doing whatever. And if it's credible enough and I have enough information to mod the scene and create problems, the person evaluating the allegation for predication will say, well, in a balance of probabilities, it's more likely than not that it's happening. I need to look into it. And at the end, more than likely, it will come out that it was false. But the damage is done, right? I told you at the beginning that every investigation carries the burden that something bad will happen. And one of the things that happen is that the reputation of Rod is probably destroyed. Because even though he was clear from this matter, it's like the O.J. Simpson, did he really kill Nicole or not, right? It permeates the air, the black cloud over the head of the guy, saying did he do it or not, and that's what happens in an investigation. You can't do it alone, so you work closely with counsel inside of your company or outside. There's strategic reasons for that. One of them is, as I mentioned earlier, attorney-client privilege. To be honest with you, in my opinion, and I have many lawyer friends, neighbors, family members, but it's better not to investigate with lawyers. First of all, they investigate differently than investigators do. In my opinion, they are an obstruction in general to how an investigation should be done. In general, it's problematic. They're on your side, not on your side. It's better not to have lawyers in your team. But that's not the way things work. You have to have them because of legal reasons. And you do need advice. You do need someone to ask the question of, can I look in that wallet? Can I download that email? Can I go talk to that person? This guy belongs to a union. Can I speak with him with a union representative? I'm doing an interview in Asia. Can I do a woman-to-men interview? I'm in Saudi Arabia. Can I talk to someone on a Friday? That's their weekends, right? You need a source of information for this, and lawyers are typically only good for that. Other than that, it's an obstruction. Plus, they lie a lot, right? A lot of what they say is not true. You work closely with HR, human resources, because they know the company better, and they have the position. They know the position of the company. They will be the ones that say, Ariel, ultimately this person will be disciplined. Hey, Ariel, by the way, keep in mind that we really want to take this person out, or we don't want to take him out. They have a history of violation, whatever. So you work close with human resources, and you work close with legal. And the rest of them are some that you may or may not have, but the one group that you really work closely with is IT department. Most of us in investigations are not techies, and we need their expertise to know the architecture of the IT system in order to understand how email works, how documents are archived and saved, so that we can conduct our investigation. What is a fraud examination? It's analyzing documents, conducting interviews, doing reports, and sometimes, not all the time, testifying in court. Most cases don't go to court, as I said earlier, and even if you do a good job and you find that the person did it, it might never end up in court for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. I talked earlier about the differences between the burdens of criminal cases and civil cases. You can get a much easier conviction on civil court because the burden is smaller. So if I'm not sure that even though I have complete evidence to try to convict someone and take their liberty away, and I'm not sure that I can do it, then I go straight to civil court. If I can get one or the other, if I know that I can get both convictions, it's slam dunk, and the lawyers are saying let's do it. Which one do you always try first? Do you think? No, criminal, right? Because if you do the civil one, then that can be used against you in a criminal proceeding. All right, I think we leave it here, Rod, because we don't have time to go over the rest of this.
Could we mention, I know there was some interest in here about, you want to talk briefly about getting into this area? You know, okay. People in here that are interested in getting into forensic and investigation type work in the firms. The firms do this stuff too, or in a company, or you want to start your own business.
Yeah, so if you want to do something really sexy and exciting, you go work for the government. You don't make any money, but you have a lot of fun. So FBI, Secret Service, U.S. Marshals, postal inspectors, believe it or not, are the best fraud investigators in the world. Very few people know that. It's very hard to get in. You have to be typically a CPA and/or a lawyer. So even though it's a typical law enforcement agency, badge, guns, arrest powers, again, don't make any money. It's very difficult to go in because they have a lot of resources and they have good reputation. FBI is exciting. I have a lot of FBI friends, guys. I just had a friend of mine on my salary class, and I told you right, give a presentation on what he's done. He has a really interesting background: CPA, MBA, worked as an accountant, but then worked for the FBI, became the top interrogator, was in Iraq, Afghanistan, doing some really cool stuff, and loved it, but didn't make any money, right? So that's one route. The other route that you can do is you go work for one of the firms. So if you want to do something less sexy, but still exciting, you get your MBA, CPA, and then you go work for one of the top accounting firms if you can. So, the Big Four, or one of the second-tier firms is also okay. Or a boutique forensic accounting firm, Navigant, FTI, and you typically do much better. The starting salary is probably in something like the FBI is not very good. It's in the 50, probably 1,000 range. If you start at a firm with an MBA, a CPA, especially if you speak a foreign language, you push in the 100,000 mark. So you double your salary immediately. If I was going to do it all over again, I will do it a little bit different. I will have gone to the government first, because I think that's something to do on your resume. Get your MBA, CPA, go to the FBI, do that for 4 or 5 years. It looks phenomenal on the resume, and your experience will be great for you. And then you go work for an accounting firm. Now you triple your salary, literally. So you spend 4 years in the FBI. You're speaking another language, maybe not. You have an MBA, CPA. 5 years, go work for an accounting firm. You probably go in as a experienced senior or manager. You're the 120, 130, 140 range. Not bad money. You are 26, 27 years old. And then from there, you can stay and do that, or you can do what Ron and I did. We don't make any money, but we work for Siemens. And you go work for a company, and then you got a trade-off, right? You work probably, and not necessarily completely correct, but a better work and life balance. But where the money is really in the stock options. And remember, when you go work for firms, you only have cash. So you only have a significant amount of cash and compensation on your base salary, but you get very little bonus. When you work for a company, you get a more reasonable base, but you can get stock in the millions of dollars, right? Just like Walt did on the job. So that's some ideas. I encourage you to get what anybody tells you. The most important thing to get is the CPA exam. You will never be unemployed. It doesn't matter what way you want to go to. It's respected worldwide. So do that. And if you get the master's already, if you can get a foreign language, learn a foreign language. If you know one, get it better, because that really will make a difference in getting a job. Any foreign language. I don't know if anyone in you speak foreign languages, but the dollars go up significantly if you are a CPA, MBA, master's, and then you have a foreign language. You will never be unemployed.
And again, a lot of times their interest there is just that you're culturally diverse. If you know another language, you understand another culture. Not even then when you really care because you're going to use the language. It's more that you have language. Good. Questions? Let's take advantage of the opportunity that Ariel is here. Any other questions on your hearts here?
What foreign languages are you working?
So I think the BRIC countries, right? Portuguese, Russian, Indian, Chinese, Arabic. Those are really the top languages that are in demand for forensic accountants. So in Chinese, you can do Mandarin, Arabic, Russian.
So the foreign language should help for you while
It helps you if you were. That's a good question. So you graduate from this program and you get a job at one of the firms. You stay in the United States, of course, and then a lot of multinational companies hire big four firms to conduct investigations on those countries. They have problems. They typically the teams are always sourced from the U.S. for whatever reason. The investigation team. So having a foreign language puts you in that demand category, and once your name keeps getting called on lists. So I don't know if any of you work for any consulting firms or firms at all.
A lot of them are going to work for the firms.
So I did. I worked for several, and your name keeps getting put in names, right, in lists, and your name keeps getting added up to this list. You are on demand. Your chargeability goes up. You got a lot of projects. Everybody wants you to be on their projects. You're having fun. You're learning. But guess what? You're moving up the rank quick because you have something different to offer. Yes.
How have you been from examiner? How easy was it for you to just go into this?
So I tell people that the only reason I have a job is because I speak Spanish, and that's the truth. I started as a street cop And I only did that because I wanted to learn, I needed to pay bills. So I worked the midnight shift at a large police department at night, and I worked full-time at school during the day, and I slept in between. And I used that with a master's and my certifications and went into corporate investigations. But the only reason I got my first job is because I spoke Spanish, and the company that I went to work for had a big fraud. That they were investigating for a company that had a big fraud, and they needed me, so they called me, and I did it. And after that,
And you were also in some of the big four, though. Do you think that was a bit?
well, yeah, when I went to work for KPMG, they had a big fraud in the country that they needed Spanish speakers, and that's how I got started. And after that, it was nonstop. You start building up your resume, so it looks very well. And you can go in any direction. If you want to slow down a bit, you get a regular corporate job, like we do. If you're full of fire and young and want to be on the run and traveling. I mean, last year I've flown 1.4 million miles in the 5.5 years that I worked for Siemens. So in a good year, I put in 250,000 miles. Rod did also that in the previous life, but this year has been a very good year. But last year I clocked 250,000 miles, and I never missed a weekend at home. By the way, last year. So it's good. I mean, it has a trade-off, right? My kids, my wife. I wasn't home, but I went to a lot of countries last year, and I had fun. So.
Anything else?
Yes.
What are the rewards that you find in your positions such as the FBI versus the corporate firm?
Yeah. So I was joking about not making any money. I think we do fairly well. At Siemens, I think we do very well in that department, and so that's one reward. You have a pretty good life, but you have a lot of fun. And the thing is, to be in this, you have to have the stomach. If you're gonna sit in front of someone and really try to elicit a confession and get them to write it down, you know that person's going down. They marry, you know all that. They have kids. The kids are going to private school. Something bad's gonna happen. You have to have the stomach for that. But for me, it's I have conviction, and that's what I want to do every day. And that's how I get the reward from it. The money's good.
Remember, the people you're usually investigating are high-level accountants and C-level executives. Right? So
and then some of them are your friends. So my reward in a job like this is I'm having fun, but I'm actually, I'm doing fairly well. We are compensation-wise, but in the FBI, you have a lot of fun, right? You go in, you putting doors down, you're taking people down, So the reward is, I have friends that I have said, I had a good friend, lawyer, CPA, bilingual, he scored off the charts, and he loved his job. He was a postal inspector, actually. And wouldn't trade it for, he kept getting calls, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 a year. And he didn't want to do it because he was having too much fun.
Okay, any other questions? Or I want to thank you guys for your participation. Great job, good questions and engaging. And give a special thanks to Ariel.